What are you working on right now in your practicing?
Am I practicing? Well, you know what? To be completely honest with you, I don't get a chance to practice much anymore because of my schedule. It's funny because my teachers would always tell us that when you were young. They say if you get good, you're not going to be able to practice when you're older because you'll be busy. Hopefully, you'll be busy. So if you're always working, you won't have time to practice. So the vast majority of my practicing happens on the bandstand. You know, it's funny because I actually did an interview recently with a guy from the New York Times. We were rapping, and he was asking me about, because I don't have this thing where I like in my day-to-day life, you know, like I curse, I swear, you know, like if someone tells me something, I'm gonna try and be as honest with them about how that affects me, and to let them know. You know, I try and be as sincere as possible, but I try and allow myself to be vulnerable enough around people to really be able to communicate with them. And one of the things that is, I think, plagued a lot of things in my career is I think mistakes are beautiful. I love them, you know. And I was talking to the guy from the New York Times, and he was like, you know, I noticed that you played something that sounded a little off, and the horn cracked, and you tried to do it again. And he said, but I could hear that you weren't trying to play the phrase clean. You were trying to get the horn to crack. And I told him, well, I was trying to understand why the horn did it. And that kind of, he had never heard anything like that, you know. But, you know, people are different, musicians are different. But, you know, one of the things that I feel is really important, you know, for older guys specifically, too, is when you don't have a lot of time to practice, you have to use the bandstand as your means of practicing. So, you know, there may be a gig where I say, okay, my double tongue is getting a little rusty. That's not something that, you know, most jazz musicians do. You know, trumpet players is double tongue in the traditional Western way. But there's ways to be able to sneak it in there to be able to work on it. So, you know, I look for those things. But I basically practice on the bandstand. I think the last time I had an opportunity to sit down in my home and, like, practice for, like, 2 hours or even an hour, I mean, that might have been 9-10 months ago.
You know? What about your group? You must rehearse your group on from time to time. No, you're just playing the gigs. And
well,
that's where it's
no, I
happening.
mean, that's the crazy thing about it. Like, for instance, like, we haven't played in maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks. We just did this series of concerts at the Harlem stage, which was really cool, where we premiered all this music. We recorded, we're putting out a double album next year. I have 2 names. Everyone knows me as Christian Scott, but my friends and family call me Christian Atunde Adjua. I don't know how much you know about my personal history, but my family is really, really, the best way to put it is steeped into the tradition of Afro-Native American culture in New Orleans, which is colloquially known as Mardi Gras Indians or Black Indians. My grandfather was the only guy to be a chief of 4 different tribes. So people that know me, you know, they don't just call me Christian Scott. A lot of people call me Atunde Adjua. So this next record that we're putting out is more or less a mirroring type of record. So it's a double CD. One side is Christian Scott, the other side is Christian Atunde Adjua. So, I mean, we recorded close to 40 songs. I mean, there's all types of stuff on this record. There's stuff that, I mean, you know, we have like remixes with like Dilated Peoples to like, you know, stuff with like guys like Sean Lennon is going to do a remix. So it's like all types of stuff, but it reflects all the things that we enjoy and love, you know, musically. So, so that's what we've been working on recently. You know, we haven't really been on the road so much because last year we put out this album, Yesterday You Said Tomorrow. And we won an Edison Award. I feel awful saying this, but it's like, I didn't know about this award, right? And I found out that I won it, and I went to go and get the award, and the guy that I'm with is a PR person for Universal. He's like, why aren't you freaking out? And I was like, well, it's just an award. It's okay, right? And the guy's like, man, this is like a Nobel Peace Prize in music, you idiot. You know, so I'm like, okay, well, cool. So around that time, we were having a rough little patch touring. You know, we may have went to Europe 5 or 6 times the year before. But after we won the award, we literally were on the road for like 10 months straight. And so we did enough touring, and, you know, as all guys that are 27, 28 years old, you don't want to be stuck in a tour bus that long with a bunch of men, you know what I mean? Because it gets funky and guys fight and stuff. So we took a little bit of a break and made these 2 records. So that's what we've been working on.
Well, I look forward to hearing how all that turns out.
But we do, you know what, actually, I'm sorry. I went off on a tangent, but for the record, we rehearsed. Because we had 7 days to rehearse and then a 6-day recording session. That was the day after the 7 days of rehearsal where these guys had to learn 40 songs. Wow. And I didn't play any of the music for them ahead of time. So it's like, okay, like I want to just go in raw, you know? And the great thing about having the resource of being around players that want to be better every day. You know, and it's like we're constantly challenging each other. You know, we make fun of each other. We're incredibly mean to each other, but I think that helps to have a more, you know, democratic process in the music. Like, it's, of course, yes, it's my band and maybe my name on the billing, but at the end of the day, it's our group. And, you know, and I don't fuss at these guys or tell them to do things that they don't want to do or they feel is musically they disagree with, you know. So, but we do rehearse, but it's usually only when we're doing something.
So in that situation, I'm sorry, where you had 7 days to basically teach them 40 tunes. Now, how did you ensure that that came out a success?
Oh, there's no way to ensure it. It could have been a complete tragedy, you know. But at the end of the day, no, I mean, it could have been that, but at the end of the day, what happens on the record happens. Like, you know, the record that we did yesterday, you said tomorrow, we did at Rudy Van Gelder's, which he came out of retirement to do this record. No headphones, live off the floor. You make a mistake, it's immortalized in the record because he's not changing anything. Yeah. So from doing that record that way the last time, I think it's given a lot of the guys a different type of machismo, I guess is a good word too. It's a lot of confidence. Right. So, you know, the thing is like I said, like, we're not the type of guys that subscribe to the sort of cosmetic philosophy of playing music. Like, if it happened, that's what happened. So we'll just let it live, you know. And so, you know, but there's no way to ensure it's not going to be a complete tragedy. You just have to go in thinking to yourself that you want to try and make a document where people can feel that you're playing with love in your heart and you're trying to communicate with them. And once you get that, then you're in it. I think you're in there, you know.
All right. Play with love in your heart.
Yeah, love in your heart. Yeah, I mean, I was always taught that from the old guys. Mm-hmm. People can feel that, man. You know, this. We always learned as kids. I remember Danny Barker. I was a little kid. We would go by his house and he'd be playing the banjo. And Miss Lulu Barker, they both recorded on Capitol Records years ago. I mean, you're talking like the 40s. But we would be by the house and she would make a dish called Yum Yum, which is like a bread pudding, right? And she would. I remember one time being over there and she walked it in and she had like this swagger to her walk. And I remember he looked at me and he said, you know, 90% of communication isn't verbal, is what he told me. He was like, body language. He was like, people can feel energy. He's like, and have you decided that you're playing this music for narcissistic reasons? I don't know if he worded it that way, but that's what I got out of it. If you're playing this music for that reason, then people will be able to tell. He said, as much as people can't stand or, you know, talk as much stuff as they talk about guys like Miles Davis, you can still hear that he's allowing himself to be vulnerable enough to communicate with you, and he's playing with love in his heart. They can talk about the fashion and turning their back, but at the end of the day, he's captivating you because he does love you, you know. Yeah. And as long as you can play with that, then you'll always be able to have an audience. Mm-hmm. You know,
that makes a lot of sense.
I appreciate those old guys, man. They are not around anymore, you know. And I'm not an old guy, you know. I'm 28 years old.
But right? You're keeping them alive.
But you know, I appreciate that. But it's scary to me how fast life goes. Mm-hmm. You know, when I was here at Berklee, I just thought everything was as slow as it seemed to be there. Like, why do I still have classes? You know, I'm ready to be on the road, you know. And but it's crazy, man. And, you know, thinking about the lessons that you get from those people, you know. For the younger students, one of the things that I like to say to you guys is that when older people are telling you something, even if you don't agree with them, at least listen and process what they're saying. You know, because even the most simple lessons, when you're a small child, when people say don't, you know, walk, don't run, that you can apply that to anything out here. And I'm sure your life experiences have shown you that usually when you're running into something, you're not aware of all the dynamics of it, and you probably may make a mistake. It's the same thing where I say slow everything down that you're practicing. So I appreciate those older guys, and just know that older people are a resource for you, and they're probably not telling you these things, you know, to hurt your feelings. They're probably telling them because they care about you and want you to grow. So even if you disagree, please just listen for me and think about what it is that they're saying, and then you can decide whether or not you disagree or not later.